Hey guys, Crypto Sunday, and it's starting to look up a little bit. This week I'm up 6%, looking pretty good, looking sort of up largely since New Year's Day, sort of bottomed for the week around New Year's Eve, and yeah, things sort of almost immediately kicked off well. And sort of the last day, not entirely sure whether it's down to sort of Trump's escapades in South America with Venezuela, and he's also sort of making some rather unprecedented-like comments about Colombia as well. I think saying the president needs to watch his ass. You think, yeah, you are president. Like, probably should be a little bit more tactful than that, but there you go. Looking at the coin shares report, it was negative again, slightly smaller negative than the previous week, 446 million in weekly outflow. Looks like we're going to go positive again, judging by the last week. And yeah, so this previous week, 443 million out of Bitcoin, quite a small amount really, 59 million out of Ethereum, so I was looking a little bit better. 27 million out of the multi-asset one. I sort of never really know what the products on these are. They don't go into a huge amount of detail. A tiny amount into Solana, relative to sort of last couple of months, only 7.5 million, but 70 million into XRP, still getting a little bit of love. And then very small numbers sort of on the altcoins, rounded down to minus 0.0 on Sui, a little bit into short Bitcoin, a little bit into Chainlink and some others. And by country, nothing too much, sort of 14 million out of Switzerland, 35 into Germany. I presume the 35 pretty much has to be XRP funds. So interesting. Europeans are going for XRP. Can't imagine that's other coins. But yeah, that's the previous week. This last week was only a 4-day week because we had New Year's Day, of course. And as I say, looks like we're going to be net positive overall. Very slow day on Monday. Tuesday was a relatively strong inflow across the board. Good to see. And then New Year's Eve was quite an outflow, 348 million. And then day after New Year's Day, inflow across the board, 471. So yeah, a few hundred million in, pretty good. And very similar sort of proportional numbers for Ethereum. Very small outflow day on Monday, sort of strange day, pretty much almost zeros across the board apart from the two grayscales, biggest of all the old grayscale, so I'd put that down to strange sort of trading. And New Year's Eve, again, small outflow across the board, but 2nd of January, Friday, reasonable inflow, 174 million, sort of erasing all the reds for the past few days. So good start to the year. And Solana, of course, still being new, has had no outflow at all, which is pretty good, other than 21 shares, of course, a long while ago. But yeah, the 4 days, all positive, some sort of reasonably big numbers, especially on the 2nd, on Friday, with Fidelity taking in 5.4 million. It's not a huge number, but it's reasonably big for these funds. And the Bitwise one still continues to, march ahead, really, with 626 million. So looking at the companies, we do have a little bit more than just strategy this week, although they did buy 1,229 Bitcoin for 108 million at 88,000, which is a little bit lower than the current price, taking their average almost up to 75,000. So they're at 672 now, and I believe last time I looked they were at 1.05 MNAV, so just a 5% premium on top of their sort of enterprise value of everything. A lot of people still keep looking at, just the market cap compared to their Bitcoin and saying, well, they're at a huge discount. You've got to include the convertible debt, and they seem to agree you've got to include all of the preferred shares and sort of derivative products on top of this. So still say it, because I think if you just add in the debt, they're still below their Bitcoin holding. So yeah, they seem to say it's still at a premium. Maybe they want to sort of show that they're at a premium. That's more positive. And then we got 4,279 buy from Metaplanet, which is quite good. Haven't seen Metaplanet for a little while. They've been sort of saying they're putting up some pretty big number targets for the next 2 years. So kick things off. They're saying that is during Q4 2025, so they're not, certainly not going weekly announcements of buys at the moment, but yeah, during a quarter, they've done 4,200. And we also got the quarterly announcement from Paolo of Tether, going for the Asian lucky number 8s, it seems, 8,888 point many eights. But yeah, that's reasonable amount of Bitcoin, and obviously my favourite because it is being bought purely with profit. There's no leverage, no debt being used, no stock issuance to buy this, and no one that can sort of come after them if the price goes down. So yeah, always like to see Tether buying. So speaking of strategy, obviously we've had the end of the year, and so the end of the quarter earnings are going to be looking pretty unhealthy. Bitcoin has dropped 24% from end of September to end of December, and yeah, that's going to cause whatever it is, $18 billion net loss for them. So that's not going to be good. You would expect, that's largely already been priced in, but certainly the gains, when they announce a 10 billion net profit, that seems to have already been priced in, because nothing happens on the day. You wouldn't expect it to, really. It's generally old news. We know this is 24% down for the quarter, but the earnings aren't going to be out for whatever it is, another 6 weeks. So there's no reason for that to be actually news on the day. They're a big company now. They can sort of have this stuff priced in. But yeah, just interesting to see that. Could be more fuel for S&P and what is it, MSCI potentially excluding them from indexes and things. Nasdaq still seem to be relatively happy. Can't remember whether they are actually. I don't think they're in the S&P 500, but yeah, we'll see going forward. Bit of an unusual one. The Bitcoin Bitfinex hacker has, or both of them, it appears, have been released from prison and are sort of thanking the bipartisan prison reform law signed by Donald Trump. Ilya Lichtenstein was sentenced in November 2024 to 5 years in prison after pleading guilty to money laundering, conspiracy, and admitting the hack of billions of dollars worth of crypto. He stole 120,000 Bitcoin, and has now been freed. So you may sort of remember this was both of them. And Heather Morgan releasing rap. You could sort of call it rap in inverted commas, I think, under the name Razzle Khan. When they, went by the Crocodile of Wall Street. This was just really, really sort of surreal when it came out. People were almost sort of looking up to them, even if they've had money stolen themselves, and it was sort of, a famous thing rather than a, sort of, oh no, this awful criminal has hacked money. It was very, very strange, sort of come out with a sort of a rap video, or people just, playing their old rap videos and that sort of thing, and, people just seeing them as not really a criminal. But they are both out, it seems, after sort of, barely, not even a year and a half. So not quite sure why they should be out. Really hoping this doesn't sort of lead to more calls for Sam Bankman-Fried to get out, because that was, far, far worse. But yeah, there you go. And BlackRock, obviously loving Bitcoin, ending 2025 with 771,000 Bitcoin. I don't know whether that means they haven't sort of, well, they're saying in the iShares Bitcoin Trust, IBIT, stood at 771,000. Obviously, they do have some, other products as well. They have the UK one, which isn't technically IBIT, which I hold, so I presume they, hold additional Bitcoin to cover that as well, and they, I believe, hold some for sort of institutional clients that wouldn't be included in this. So I would imagine that they hold more than that as well. That's just what is in IBIT. And then yeah, this sort of an old quote of Larry Fink saying, it could get to 700,000. He sort of say earlier in 2025, he outlined discussions with a sovereign wealth fund, unnamed, discussing a 2 to 5% allocation, and saying if everybody adopted that conversation, it would be $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 for Bitcoin. So yeah, they're obviously like in their holding, it's $67 billion worth of Bitcoin, and they're making a much higher fee on that than they do off, S&P, NASDAQ funds and that sort of thing. They're sort of driven down to, a few basis points now from most of the others. So to be getting 25 basis points on, a decent sum of money. Still like to check in on the Ethereum burning every now and then, or sort of lack of burning now. You've seen sort of since the merge, we had this period of going down that I've showed before, and sort of April 2024, it basically bottomed and then started a continual line upwards, and we're now sort of back into relatively inflationary Bitcoin, or inflationary Ethereum, sorry. Comparing to Bitcoin, it's still very, very low, 0.2% inflation per year versus 1.273. Obviously, this will come down with halvings for Bitcoin, but a long way away. We don't know where Bitcoin is going, or where Ethereum is going to be in 8 years. There's various upgrades sort of talked about from then, but yeah, I think we did still sort of hope for a little bit more burning than this. You sort of look since the this was since burning started, so they had burning but before the merge, and supply was obviously increasing quite a lot since then. Then you had the merge and the change to proof of stake, and yeah, if you look at sort of the last 30 days, for example, it's basically died. So 70 and almost 80,000 Ethereum issued in the last 30 days, and 500 Ethereum burnt, 550 burnt. So, at points you were getting more burnt than issued, and it went deflationary. That's why the total supply was going down, and you were getting quite a significant amount more burnt than issued. And it was sort of, rocketing down. It was looking like it would go below 120 million at one point. And yeah, seen as that was where you got the ultrasound money. It was seen as a harder currency than Bitcoin, not only sort of low inflation, but being widely used and overall deflationary, which was seen as it could potentially overtake Bitcoin. But yeah, now you're getting to this, basically no burning at all. It's not even 1% of what is being issued has been burnt. Then it's basically just changed back to a normal currency. Look at the last 30 days, the inflation rates are almost identical. So yeah, not really sure. And I sort of reason that made me look at this was I think I saw an article recently that the L1 for Ethereum had seen its highest daily transactions per, or highest number of transactions per day, sort of 20 million transactions or something. So it sort of made me think, well, why isn't there more being burnt? I don't think that counts. I mean, they're saying it's the layer one, so that doesn't count loads and loads of stuff being done on base, and then sort of uploading that to Ethereum. This was L1 transactions, so yeah, didn't quite understand that. Leave a comment if you're aware of this. Why burning would be so low if transactions are at an all-time high. Checking on the miners, we've got hash rate sort of up and down, still a little bit all over the place. We have had on New Year's Eve a drop down to 861 exahash, relatively low, but it's come back up. And as far as difficulty goes, that is sort of basically bang on, I believe. We're getting an adjustment on Thursday, this coming Thursday, and we're at 10.07 minutes at the moment. So yeah, less than a 1% move, admittedly downwards again, which is good to see. We're getting ever so slightly rising crypto price and slightly lowering difficulty for sort of the last few adjustments now, down from 155. So always good to see. Double, a good double whammy for the Bitcoin miners, as opposed to a bad double whammy of price decreasing and difficulty increasing. That was the worst thing you can get. So who knows, Hive Digital may have turned a corner. And the global liquidity, of course. We know I still love this chart, even if it sort of broke down from the 2024 period onwards that I was looking at. If we sort of zoom out and look at sort of the whole history that this can give us, then I think we're looking pretty good still. It has its long periods of sort of back in mid 2029, you'd have said, oh, it's broken down completely. This one isn't delayed at all. This is current global liquidity. The other one I was looking at was delayed by 12 weeks, but I think if you sort of zoom out to multi-year periods, it doesn't have quite as much of an impact. But yeah, you sort of get reasonable periods above and below this line, but I think you'd have to say there's a bit of correlation here. Global liquidity going up tends to, at some point lead to Bitcoin going up, and we've obviously been having a continual strong move. This sort of, the implied price of Bitcoin based on the global liquidity varies a huge amount depending on, how you sort of stretch this the Bitcoin chart itself. If you sort of, want to make it fit a little bit closer to the line, you can get an extra sort of 50,000 on Bitcoin quite easily. Some people say this is sort of, fitting the chart. You shouldn't be stretching the chart to fit it, but I sort of think you can't actually, manipulate the direction. You can't make, this sort of gap go away and, this sort of gap close up, because that would be moving it in opposite directions. All you can do is stretch it, one way or the other. So if there isn't correlation, then there isn't correlation. There isn't a lot you can do about that. You can't, so as some people seem to be saying, manipulate the chart to do what you want with it. All you can do is sort of move it and see whether it does line up on different time periods and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's still looking pretty good if we sort of look at the 2024 and move Bitcoin around a little bit. You can sort of see that on the short term it doesn't really sort of flow that well. That was what led people to sort of say it's delayed by 12 weeks, but I don't really think you can get quite that granular with it. So I do prefer the sort of zooming out long-term model for it, basically. And yeah, that's still looking very, very nice. I think this is Asian liquidity. You can sort of change this to US focused and Eastern focused and sort of global totals, and it does seem this is still China and Japan and people sort of pumping liquidity into the system. And there's arguments that potentially doesn't go into Bitcoin because of capital controls and sort of basically the Fed issuing money is much easier for it to go into Bitcoin than it is for when China are doing it, they tend to sort of just buy their own debt and gold, it seems. So I sort of still think that that money eventually finds its way into the global economy and then into Bitcoin. So we'll see. But this is sort of, even now on the longer time frame, this is now probably the largest divergence, even bigger than this one in 2019 and bigger than this one in sort of early 2023. So we'll see. And so, at long last, a green coins for the week. Bitcoin up 4.3%, Sol up 8%, Ethereum 7, Chainlink 7.6, Helium 6.6, and then some of the Solana coins. Radium 18% up for the week. Gito 20.5 performer for the week, although these are tiny positions, of course. Metaplex 4.47 and Honey 2.8%. So I should put a weekly. I've added the sort of week-on-week change to my overall tab. I should probably put it in here. There's plenty of room for it, and it would be a little bit easier to see it on screen. So probably add that for next week. So yeah, leave your thoughts in comments below. And Happy New Year to everyone. Like and subscribe. See you soon.